Story 1 by Reddit user KRE23. As a registered nurse, death comes hand in hand with the struggles of our work. I make it an effort that if a patient is about to pass and they have no family, friends, or absolutely anyone loved ones by their side, I stay in the room with them. I believe one of the saddest things in life is dying alone. We were not alone when we were born into this world. It feels unfair to leave it solo. So when I can help it, I stay by their side. One day I was floated to the oncology unit and I had a patient, let's call her Marjorie, on comfort care. Poor prognosis and a plan of care had been agreed to cancel all life-sustaining treatment. It was obvious from her breathing that the moment was coming soon. So I quickly completed the rest of my tasks, ensured my other patients had all they needed, and I grabbed a chair and sat by her bedside, taking a computer to work on documentation. I quickly glanced to the other side of the bed and noticed that the previously lit candle, patient loved candles and was given the okay to keep one lit, was no longer burning. I remember feeling disappointed that I did not have any matches, but the thought quickly left my mind as Marjorie's breathing patterns reminded me the time was even closer. Suddenly, I felt as if someone was standing close behind me, their breath faintly landing on the back of my neck. I quickly turned my head. No one there. All I could see were the figures of my co-workers through the doorway quickly walking by as they went about their duties. Then, something caught my eye, and I immediately glanced back to the candle. It was burning once again, stronger and brighter this time. I remember feeling a strange comfort, a sense of security, far from fear and concern as I was mesmerized by the flicker of the flame. For whatever reason, and I will never be able to begin to explain, I suddenly said aloud, "It's okay, Marjorie. I'm here. It's okay to go." And within a few seconds the candle went out, and a few seconds after that, my patient's breathing stopped. I remember sharing this experience with my colleagues, but they all brushed it off as the window being open and my fatigue getting the best of me. But the windows were definitely closed, because there's no way of opening them. I was also definitely not fatigued, but very wide awake and present. I have never been a very religious person, despite being from a religious family. But over 8 years of being a registered nurse and 2 years of being a nurse practitioner, I can honestly say the experience I have had with this career has brought me closer to my faith, or at least acknowledged the possibility of something on the other side. Marjorie was there in the room that day, in both the physical and spiritual sense, and I'm glad I was able to be there. She did not die alone, and I know in my heart she knew that. Just to clarify, faith can mean numerous things, and it doesn't mean that I myself am going to start encouraging others to start following a specific religious spectrum, wear colourful rosary beads, sleep with a cross and chant Latin religious lines. I did not mean to offend or cross someone's strong hold on their own belief system. I was simply sharing my personal experience of one I will never forget, and I appreciate you all reading. Thanks again. Stay well. Story 2 by Reddit user itsbreezy212. I've had this weird feeling in work for a while now. I work in a warehouse picking orders for customers. We have a hazard room for like aerosols and paintings, things like that. However, that's where I get the strange feeling. That sinking feeling of dread and panic like when someone is watching you. I thought maybe I was losing it. I always looked at the same point in that room, at the emergency exit. Something felt off about it, like that's where all the negative energy was coming from. I've never been a person to fully believe in the paranormal, but over the past couple of years, I've had my fair share of experiences. The lights in work have motion sensors, and given them about 20 minutes, they turn off. But that emergency exit, they are always on. I asked if they were broke, and they said no. I know for a fact that no one went in that part of the hazard room, so I know that I'm not going insane when I saw the lights were on. I'm always scared, but compelled to go over there, I did see it once, like a shadow man peering over the boxes at me, but it was only brief. When I'm not looking, sometimes I see something moving in the corner of my eye, always watching. I guess that's him. I don't know if anyone has died here over the years or something has just followed me, but I know for a fact I hate that emergency exit door. Before I continue to the next story, I just want to say thank you for choosing to watch this video, and I hope you're enjoying my narration. If you are, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a comment. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. Story 3. By Reddit user, The Sweaty Sock. So I work in a prison in the UK. I always like to work nights because you do 7 days on and 7 days off. Whilst on nights, I get locked into a wing with no keys. We have a sealed pouch with a key inside for emergencies or if I find someone is hanging and I need to get in to cut them down, etc. I'm in charge of looking after 200 plus prisoners. After a few busy hours on the landings, answering cell bells and doing my checks on people who are essentially on suicide watch, the wing starts to settle down, and through the night, I do multiple patrols. During these patrols, I've witnessed so many bizarre things. Here are just a very small portion of those things that have happened to me whilst on nights. One night, I was on 3's landing doing my checks. I heard a loud bang coming from 1's landing outside the servery. When I went to investigate, there was a broom on the floor. When I reviewed the CCTV footage, you can clearly see the broom slowly being lifted away from the wall it was resting on and then quickly getting thrown to the ground. We have the footage burned off, and most of the people at work have seen it. We usually show it to new staff before they do their first night shift to freak them out. One night we had someone overdose. He was located in cell 237. I was working the week after this all happened, and the cell was locked off for police investigation and was completely empty. At about 3:30 a.m. in the morning, the cell bell for 237 was pressed. At first, I didn't even know the cell belonged to the guy that had died the previous week, but as soon as I looked into the empty cell, I realized and just froze. It takes a lot to freak me out, but I didn't walk back on that part of the landing until roll count. These are some more minor but still equally as creepy things that happened just last week that prompted me to share this. While walking on 3's landing, one of the showers on 2 turned on by itself. The only way to turn it on is to press a button on the wall inside the shower. I went in to investigate, and the showers were locked and lights inside turned off. It was about 2:30 a.m. Approximately 30 minutes later, I was walking down the 2's landing and an office door slammed shut. I checked the landings for open windows, and they were all shut. Again, every time I hear a noise, I always investigate and love anything creepy, but this sent shivers down my spine. I've got so many more bizarre things that have happened to me, and I've heard some really creepy stories from colleagues too that I could share in the future. Story 4. By Reddit user, Pharaoh of Smoke. I work at a fast food restaurant and have had some weird stuff happen, but mostly it could be explained. My co-workers and I heard an extremely loud and repeated banging right before closing. A little description. The front of the store is solid glass besides metal column reinforcements to hold the glass in place. The right side of the store has booze all the way from the front to the back. I was at the sink wash, which is about 30 feet behind the glass. One co-worker, my best friend, was close by, around 20 feet behind the glass, and the other co-worker, her fiancé, was sitting at a booth in the back of the store, also around 20 feet away. All 3 of us heard a loud banging, as if someone was pounding on the glass. It was 4 to 5 rapid bangs, and was in the immediate area. After a second of silence, one co-worker asked, "Did anyone else hear that?" We both replied yes. I stayed at the sink, assuming nothing sinister. The other co-worker hopped up from the booth to investigate the noise with my best friend right on his heels. As soon as he got within a foot of the front door and glass, the noise happened again. This time it was just one big bang, and I immediately said, "Jay, please tell me that was you." He was stunned and just said no. His description is that the noise was in his immediate personal space, as if on the glass right in front of him. It's important to point out that the glass didn't move one bit. Movement in this particular glass is ordinary, whether it's from the door opening or closing, or even from wind, thunder, or music. I suggested maybe someone had thrown something at the trash can outside immediately in front of the glass. We investigated and found no one in the surrounding area, and nothing had been moved or disturbed in the slightest. I'm not suggesting anything, but I'd really like to hear some ideas or theories. We know no one was around, no object was around, and the glass itself wasn't affected. We looked further into the weather, but there was no thunder or wind and no earthquake activity during this time. There were no power outages or transformers blown. Story 5. By Reddit user Silverbright. A few years ago, myself and two of my employees travelled up to a small cabin in the woods to replace a leaking water heater. What happened next was stunning to all three of us. I had been up to the small cabin in the woods earlier that day to see if the water heater in the cabin could be repaired. It was leaking badly and beyond repair. I phoned the owner of the cabin and explained the situation, and he agreed to have it replaced. I was unable to return until late that afternoon with the new water heater and my two employees to help remove the old water heater from the bathroom closet where it sat. Now let me describe this cabin. It was small, simple, and had only one large room that served as the kitchen and dining room, and a nice bathroom where the water heater was. A loft area served as the only bedroom in the cabin. As we began the work to remove the old water heater from the closet in the bathroom, I was midway through describing what needed to be done to remove the old water heater, when all of us heard a lady call out in an alarmed voice from the main kitchen area. "Hello? Hello?" We all stopped for a few seconds, very surprised. Nobody was supposed to be at that cabin or nearby. I immediately walked out of the bathroom into the main kitchen area thinking maybe a neighbour had come into the cabin wondering what we were doing there. Nobody was there. We immediately searched the cabin. Nothing. We checked outside and all over the property. No one was there. By now, my youngest employee, who was 18, was nearly white as a sheet with fear. Who was that? What was that? We finished the water heater job quickly and left the cabin. The mysterious lady never spoke again. Later that night, I talked with the cabin owner and told him we heard voices in the cabin. He chuckled and said that cabin has always been strange, and he wasn't surprised. Story 6. By Reddit user The Felicious Nobody. My boyfriend works at a hotel and has told me a few stories of strange occurrences, lights flashing and flickering in one or two specific empty rooms, housekeeping finding a Ouija board in one of the rooms, strange blurs and things on the security cameras that appear to be shadows but disappear with no evidence of anything that causes them, temperature changes where the main office goes ice cold and will warm up again suddenly to normal temperature, hearing strange noises, etc. All the classical creepy kind of things that could very well have an explanation, but most of the time he hasn't found one. It's an older motel that used to be a bed and breakfast, but has since undergone renovations twice. There have been a few deaths due to natural causes, and the area that it's located in is well known for prostitution, drugs, and violent crime, but he's unaware of anything other than the natural deaths I mentioned in the actual hotel itself. Now, he's experienced strange occurrences his whole life and has told me quite a few stories, but this was the first time I actually saw what he saw. Granted, I was on a video chat and not physically present, but I still can't come up with an explanation with that being said. He was standing in the main office alone, and he told me it was cold in there randomly, and he actually grabbed his jacket, and then we continued talking about whatever it was we were discussing. He suddenly looks confused, then freaked out and told me he saw something out of the corner of his eye, and when he looked over, there was a grey vapour like mist that suddenly disappeared. I was kind of sceptical, did the whole, yeah, okay, kind of thing, and changed the topic. He suddenly changed views on the camera about 2 minutes later. He was behind the desk, away from any windows or vents, and there was no temperature issue to the point where you'd be able to see your breath, and there was nobody else in the room. What I saw in the process of forming was a wispy white-grey mist that was partially see-through. Where it was thicker, you couldn't see through it, and seemed to come out of nowhere. It didn't dissipate the way smoke does, but stayed relatively confined to the area and kind of grew in volume, and then within 3 seconds, disappeared. He asked if I saw it. I said yes, and we basically changed the subject after that, saying, "What the f*** was that?" He turned the camera back and was leaning on the desk when again, I saw it form behind him and kind of float over his shoulder. It looked solid opaque and got lighter, and I jumped and said something to the effect of, "What the fuck, there it is again!" He missed it, but jumped and said it had gotten even colder just before I'd said that. This time it was gone before he turned around and he didn't see it. A couple of minutes later, he told me the room was normal temperature again. This isn't earth-shattering, but we've been talking about it off and on the past couple of days a few times, and neither of us have any idea of what it could have been. Could it potentially have been a type of apparition? I know this isn't much to go on, and if I ever see something again, I'll try to get a screenshot, but neither camera was smudged. Nobody else in the room, not close to vents or windows that could be drafty, etc. There was also absolutely no substance use involved. Any thoughts? Story 7 by Reddit user OminousCloud218. My sister, her entire life, has been able to see the dead and communicate with them. She says that for people like her that can see them, they are actually like a beacon of lights to spirits, so they all flock to her. Growing up, she would consistently be bombarded by spirits telling her to tell my son I'm okay, or pass on some message to loved ones, or simply be basically harassed by them. Apparently, many of them kind of just meander around in a confused state, almost unaware of what's going on around them. She finally found a way to kind of control her power where she can almost shut it off when she needs to, but she can never completely block it out. She got to the point where she wanted to start using her abilities to help people. She is an amazing tarot card reader, practices Wicca, and has drawn spirits out of numerous homes. I worked at a gas station that was severely haunted. Lots of people had experiences there, including customers and employees. We all worked our shifts by ourselves there and would all experience the same things. Whistling like someone is working, seeing a shadow man, things being moved, cigars thrown at you, etc. We ended up naming him Sam. One of my co-workers was literally chased out of the building by Sam one night. She heard the footsteps rushing after her, and she ran right out the door and didn't even turn back to lock the building up because it chased her all the way out. She had to call our manager to go there to lock up for her because she was never going back there again. Random customers would bring up seeing a shadow person down the aisle. Once, I had a little girl around 5 years old ask me if I believed in ghosts when she was paying for her candy. I told her, "No, that's silly," just because I didn't want to scare her. She told me, "Well, I just saw a ghost back there," and pointed to the back coolers. It finally got to the point where the gas station owner wanted to do something about it. I told him all about my sister and how she could probably help him. He gave her permission to come in after close and get the spirit out of there. The next day, my sister came in after I locked the place up for the night. My mum came to watch as well. She slowly walked around the store. It wasn't long before she stopped in her tracks and gasped. She stood there for a while and cried a few tears. She described to me what she saw. She said that he presented himself as a man about in his 30s and was wearing old work coveralls. His arm was barely hanging there from his shoulder and was mangled. She compared it to what it is like when you twist and twist the stem off of an apple, and it is barely hanging on. She said there was lots of blood. He apparently had died in a farming accident on some farm that used to be near their property many years ago. He was confused and didn't really know he was dead. My sister smudged the entire place with sage and did some kind of weird ritual-like stuff. I wasn't exactly sure what she was doing. She then set up a mirror on the wall that was straight across from the front door. She said that doing this will help him show him the way out. Some time went by, and she said that he left and finally moved on. It was a strange feeling all of a sudden, almost like you were completely surrounded by peace. Ever since this happened, nothing paranormal has happened at that gas station. The remaining stories about paranormal experiences in this video are not specific to work. Story 8, by Reddit user Water for My Orchids. This is my first Reddit post ever. I've been wondering whether to post this or not, but I think I need to commit this to writing somehow. This is going to be a long one because this story has been building itself for months. I live in a college dorm building. It's not very old. It was built in 2000, but I've had many strange experiences that I just cannot explain. I live with 2 other people. All of us have our own tiny bedrooms. We share a common kitchen living area. The first few nights after we moved in last fall, I started noticing noises outside my window, which was strange since I live on a higher floor. There's nothing outside my window. Not trees, not birds' nests, nothing. And yet, I heard this knocking sound, like knuckles on glass. I tentatively brought it up to my skeptical roommate, and her eyes immediately widened, as she had been experiencing the same things. I kind of chalked it up to wind and moved on. I know, stupid. Then, things started getting even weirder. We would all leave to go run errands for a day, and when we got back, the cabinet doors would be open. Personal belongings would be misplaced. My necklaces kept getting removed. I had multiple instances where I had laid in bed trying to fall asleep. I would just barely hear whispering from the corner of my room. This one I am unsure about, as I was born half-deaf, but the sensation of someone being in the room with me was a strong, deep one. However, being half-deaf hasn't prevented me from hearing other things. I've heard whistles from the same corner of my room, and every once in a while, I swear I've heard words. Things like, hush, and quiet down. Things continue this way into this semester, but then I saw her. Our room is at the end of a long hallway, which has a huge floor-to-ceiling window at the rear wall. In other words, there's this big window right outside our door. It has a great view of the moon at night, so as I was walking back to my room after picking up food, I was looking at my reflection in the window to see the moon through it. I got right outside my room and suddenly, in the reflection, I wasn't alone. There was a woman next to me. She looked about my age, maybe a year or 2 older, and she turned as though she were going to put her keys in my lock. I froze and looked over. There was no one there next to me, but sure enough, there was another reflection in the window. I quickly barged into my room and wide-eyed asked my roommate in the living room if she'd just heard or seen anything. Right at that moment, there was a thud in the kitchen, but nothing had been moved. I don't think our ghost means us any harm, as I think she would have already hurt us, but I'm not sure. Any advice would be well appreciated. Story 9, by Reddit user River Nikki. When I was 16, I lived at home with my younger brother and mother. I'm telling you who lived with me because many people who I've told this to say what happened was because of other family members in the house. I should also say that no other house appliance was on. Nothing. No washing machine, which was another excuse people said. Literally nothing, except the light at the top of the stairs. I should mention a couple of things about me at that age. I was never scared of anything and genuinely believed I was invincible. I mean, who doesn't at that age? I was never scared by any horror movies or story either, and haven't been that scared since. Anyway, on to what happened. I was in my house alone that night. My mother was at her boyfriend's that night and my younger brother was staying out at a friend's, which he did every time my mum was out. It was roughly about 10:30 p.m. and I know this because I was watching a movie on TV that started at 10 p.m. That movie was In the Cut, I believe the title was, which had Meg Ryan and Mark Ruffalo in. I had a crush on Meg Ryan at the time after seeing the famous fake orgasm scene in the restaurant diner, although the movie now escapes me. Anyway, back to what happened. It was about 10:30 p.m, as I said, and out of nowhere I heard a light bang coming from the room directly above my living room where I was, which was my room. It sounded like something falling off a shelf or whatever and hitting the floor. I don't know what fell off, but I know that distinct sound of something hitting my floor. As will any of you, and it sounded like it dropped from quite high. I didn't think much of it as Meg Ryan was about to have a sex scene, and I put it down to a slightly misplaced object which just fell. Then, about 2 minutes later, I heard the most horrifying thing. Someone or something ran across the landing in my house. When I say something, I don't take it lightly. I 100% know what I heard, and I'm not crazy or paranoid. Everyone who lives in a house can tell by the sound who's coming up the stairs. It's very distinctive, just like someone running across a landing is very distinctive. You can't mistake it for something else. You know the sound. Safe to say I literally became paralyzed with horror. I couldn't move, and I couldn't breathe. The only thing that could move were my eyes, which were no longer on Meg Ryan, but staring at the living room door, just waiting. Waiting for someone or something to walk through it. This went on for about 20 seconds before I could muster up the courage to move my ass out of the door. I should know that my living room door opens into a small corridor, which only leads to the right into the kitchen and directly opposite the door are the stairs. But even more direct to the left was the door to the house. I knew if someone was there, I could beat them to the door, so I did just that. I opened the living room door, immediately took one step to my left, and opened the house door, bolted out, slamming the door behind me. I know it closed because it didn't creak like it did when you opened it. Now, I didn't mention that my eldest brother lived down the street from me. His childhood friend moved abroad and rented my brother the house. It was about 100 to 150 feet from my house. I sprinted so fast and hard I couldn't catch my breath. I ran straight into his house, not knocking or making my presence known. Just ran in, opened and slammed the door. Safe to say he was pissed. My niece, who was only 1 at the time, pretty much instantly woke up screaming and crying. As my brother came sprinting to the door preparing to defend his house and family with the most "I'm gonna kick your ass" face expression, he instantly lost that expression with the tension from his face dropping as soon as he looked at the state I was in. He had never seen me like that. He instantly knew something was wrong. I know what I heard, and I won't forget. Yeah, it was just a noise. But what the hell made it? I can't mistake it for anything. I stood there shaking and gasping for air like I had been underwater for 5 minutes. He asked me what happened, and I told him with gasps in between every couple of words. He instantly went charging out the door to check the house. My brother is not a nasty person, but he can more than take care of himself, and so can I. That's why he was freaked out too, I guess. He came back after about 10 minutes and pretty much laughed in my face. "Nothing was there," he said. "You're hearing things." Exactly. I heard something. God knows what it was, but it was something. His mood instantly changed when I snapped back and pretty much barked at him. "I know what I heard." He saw the intensity in my face and voice, and it seemed like there was some acceptance. He might not believe it, but he definitely believed what I believe I heard. Definitely safe to say I didn't go home that night, and every time an opportunity came up where I would be in the house alone, I always rang up a friend and bribed them with gaming nights playing either Halo 3 or Modern Warfare 2, and offering to pay for their takeaway, which of course they agreed to come all the time. I never heard that sound again after that night. Just a few knocks and rattles on the walls which I attribute to pipes or something along those lines. My brother inspected the house. Nothing. Not any sign of a break-in, no broken windows or door locks. I still stand by what I heard 11 years later. Something ran across my landing. It happened. I've never been so scared to be paralyzed like that. I should say one last thing. The man who helped raise me from a baby with my mum and the father of my younger brother died 3 years prior. Was it? Could it have been? God only knows. Thank you for watching and or listening to this video. Again, if you enjoyed it, please go ahead and hit the like button, and if you don't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my future uploads. Also, please leave a comment on this video letting me know what you thought of it. Comments really help with the YouTube algorithm and will really help my channel to grow. If you have a story you would like me to narrate, please email it to me at mrsinisterstories@gmail.com. If you want to support my channel even further, there are a number of ways you can do so. You can consider leaving me a tip for this video via my PayPal, link is included in the description. Check out my Teespring store and consider purchasing one of my shirt designs. I have a new design with a Dogman, a Wendigo, Skinwalker and Bigfoot all on a zebra crossing, just like the Beatles' Abbey Road album cover. Some people have been asking in the comment sections if I have done any audiobooks, and the answer to that is yes. On Audible, there is a book Punch by J.R. Park that I narrated. I do get a small royalty if you decide to purchase that. It's a revenge/horror novel that was a lot of fun to narrate. I'd like to do more audiobooks at some time in the future. Lastly, the way you can really help me to grow is to share my content with anyone you might think is interested in it. Thanks again.